Hi, this is Whitney Zhang bringing you another episode of 101 Thoughts. In this episode, we will be talking about the effects of divorce on children. More specifically, we are taking a close look at how going through divorce in childhood affects the development of mental illnesses or disorders. Substantial research has shown us that enduring a divorce as a child can leave you more vulnerable to deteriorating mental health as you grow older. In many cases, people commonly develop cases of depression or attachment anxiety disorders, of course in a range of severity. However, there are many factors that go into if this development even takes place. Some of the biggest factors, in my opinion, include how old the person was at the time of the divorce, if they had siblings or not, the family dynamics leading up to the separation, and finally, how long the divorce process took in total. Today I will be talking with 3 special guests about their personal experiences with divorce and how they think it has impacted their mental health. Instead of coming at this topic from a research perspective and looking at more data, I thought it would be more interesting to hear from actual people. I think there's so much value in hearing things from an insider's point of view, especially in order to address some of the factors I mentioned earlier. So with that, we're going to start off with our first guest. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. Let's just dive in.
I will first ask you, how old were you when your parents divorced?
I was 8 years old.
How long approximately did the divorce process take from when your parents decided to divorce to when it was actually resolved?
So my mom said that it took about 2 years total for them to be like completely legally divorced. I was 10 when they were fully divorced, so it took 2 years.
Okay. Was there any sort of lead up to the divorce, like constant fighting or arguing, hostile environment in general that you can remember leading up to when they decided to divorce?
I don't think anything was super hostile. If it was, it wasn't when me or my brother were around. I think one of the main things was that my mom coddled me too much, I guess.
Mm,
And my dad didn't like it, so that did cause some friction for them. But there wasn't a lot of outbursts or things like that. My dad just kind of was at home a lot, so I think it was just more avoidance than confrontational, if that makes sense.
yeah. I was gonna ask, did you have siblings at the time? I think you just mentioned that you have your
Yeah,
brother.
I did. He was 3 when they got divorced.
Okay. And I want to ask, do you think having your brother made the divorce easier in a way, like maybe having someone else to go through this event with you? Or on the other hand, maybe it made it more difficult since you were the older figure trying to take care of him, maybe coddling him and protecting him in a way?
Yeah, I would definitely say it makes it easier because you have someone that, even though he was a lot younger, has
Hmm.
someone who kind of has the same mental things going on. So you
Yeah.
kind of understand each other better than someone who has like married parents.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely say it made it easier.
Yeah, I can definitely see how there's like a mutual understanding that both of you are going through the same things and there's like common ground there.
Yeah.
I want to ask what the dynamic was like between, first of all, between your parents and then between you and each of your parents post divorce.
So my parents didn't really talk to each other that much. It was more through therapists and things like that. Me and my mom's relationship with us never really changed that much. Me and my dad's relationship really separated when they got divorced. We just didn't see eye to eye, and I think I was secretly grudging him for divorcing my mom. Definitely there was some friction there, but my younger brother didn't really have any issues with either of them.
Gotcha. And so I ask between the lead up to the divorce, the actual divorce process, and then after the divorce, post divorce, which of those 3 time periods would you say was the most like emotionally tolling for you?
Probably like during the divorce,
Mm,
while it was happening, both with my dad moving out and going somewhere else, and then also meeting my stepmom and like introducing this new person all while this is all happening.
right.
So it's definitely just a lot to take in.
Yeah. If you had to describe your mental health at these stages, you said that the actual divorce process was probably the most tolling. Would you say that your mental health was healthier before or like worse after? Do you have anything to say about your mental health at any point?
I would say that during was definitely bad in the moment, but I was also 8, so I didn't really understand what was happening. So I
Mhm.
would definitely say mental health wise, like in the long run, it was definitely after the divorce when I started to really kind of comprehend everything that was going on
Yeah.
and see it all come to light. And then also, I think it does cause anxiety. Not sure the exact reason, but it for sure does cause anxiety later on.
And I guess this is connected to what I'm about to ask you, but do you personally think that going through your parents' divorce when you were younger has impacted your current mental health? Any diagnoses that you have at the moment or self-diagnosed things that you suspect that you may have, do you think that your childhood divorce played a role in that?
Yeah. So through high school, I did think I had depression, but I later just found out that it was severe anxiety, which
Hmm.
present very similar, but are actually very different. But yes, my mental health was definitely affected by the divorce, and my I was diagnosed with just general anxiety, nothing too crazy.
Yeah,
And I would
totally.
say my brother had the same experiences from what I understand.
Hmm. Well, I get for some people, I think it's a really uncomfortable topic to talk about.
Yeah, I
So,
think it just happened when I was so young. So to me right now, it's just, yeah.
Well, I want to express my gratitude for allowing me to ask you these questions. Thank you so much for your responses, and let's tune in now for a talk with our second special guest. Welcome to the podcast.
so we'll dive into these questions. How old were you when your parents divorced?
When they started getting divorced, I was going into freshman year of high school.
Okay. So how long did the divorce process take in total?
The entire process started that summer before freshman year, and then it continued and didn't completely finalize until my senior year, which would have been last year.
So was there any sort of lead up to the divorce, constant arguing, or was there sort of like a hostile environment in your house that led up to the point that your parents decided to divorce?
Yeah, there was a lot of just butting heads and not no one really ever got along super well. And then eventually it led up to the point where my dad ended up cheating on my mom, so that kind of was like final straw of the whole relationship, and then it just all went downhill from there.
Mhm. Did you have siblings at the time that you were going through the divorce process?
Yes, so I have one half sister and one actual sister. During the entire time, my actual sister was still living with us. My half sister was not, but she was still like in town throughout the entire thing.
Okay. So you were the youngest of the group. Do you think having your siblings made going through the divorce easier in any way? Possibly having someone else to go through it, or maybe on the other hand, it was somewhat burdensome?
Definitely being the youngest helped me out a lot because I feel like if I didn't have any siblings going through all that, I don't know that I would have been able to go through it without having like support from someone who's going through it at the same time, the exact
Mhm.
same thing. Especially my actual sister, she's only 16 months apart from me, so we're super close anyway. So I feel like that made it a lot more comfortable to kind of have like my best friend in it with me the entire time.
And I feel like it is important to have some sort of like support system when you're going through something like that.
It's also hard too because you don't necessarily want to side with a parent, so it's having a sibling
Mhm.
is a lot easier because it's still family, but it's not picking sides between the conflict that's going on, I
Right.
feel like.
How would you describe the dynamic between your parents after the divorce happened, and then also the dynamic between you and each of your parents?
During the divorce and while everything was settling and stuff like that, I mean, it did take like 4 years, so it took a while. I definitely had a very bad relationship with my dad during the entire thing until it was all finalized.
Mhm.
Especially the lead up to it was probably worse. Like he was still in our house, but I wasn't talking to him for 3 or 4 months, even though he was still here. But my mom the entire time, like especially during and stuff, it definitely made us grow a lot closer. And I think she can say the same thing with all three of the daughters. And same thing with kind of like me not talking to him while he was here was sort of the same situation with my mom. It was just very like you could feel the tension in the air like anytime they were in the same room together. Now afterwards, they can be in the same room, but it's not the best idea in the world. my mom holding more of a grudge than my dad. And like I said too, like during, I feel like it made me become a lot closer with my mom, especially since I was living with her full time, even during the divorce. So that means like afterwards, it definitely has made me 10 times closer with her. So I would say that my relationships with my parents are very opposite of each other.
Out of the lead up to the divorce, the actual divorce process as a whole, and then like post divorce to present day, out of those 3 time periods, I guess, which one would you say was the most emotionally tolling for you?
See, this is a hard question for me because I feel like when we had first found out about everything, I was very closed off about it and I didn't really know how to react to it. And then during, I would say I was kind of on like the same level as like when I first found out because I didn't know a lot of details. But now I feel like I definitely don't have as much rage, I would say, like anger about it. I would say honestly, what affected me most was probably during, just because again it was 4 years too, so it was a lot of time.
And I feel like the time where the divorce process happened in your life was happening at one of the most stressful times in a teenager's life, period. So I can't imagine those stacking on top of each other. That would be hard.
Yeah.
If you can recall, how would you describe your mental health at any of those stages?
I would say before we found out they were going to get a divorce and everything, I was apparently the only one in my family who didn't really see it coming as much as everybody else. So it caught me off guard a lot more than the rest of my family, I would say. So I feel like as soon as I found out and like during the process, I didn't know how to act. I was kind of acting out and my school wasn't going as well when I first found out about everything. And I just know that I was very off. Like my attitude was always off and I like emotionally wasn't really responding to situations in the correct way. And it took me a long time to figure out how to grasp that and how to really think through my feelings before I like express them, I guess. So I would say now I feel like I'm at a way better mental state than I was during, for sure, just because I feel like I just have grown like a lot and I feel like I'm way better at analyzing the situation before I express any feelings now. So I definitely feel like my mental state is way better afterwards than it was like during or even like before or anything like that.
I feel like divorce can affect kids in such different ways. The reason why I started out this interview with asking how old you were is because I feel like that kind of determines how the whole thing plays out in terms of like how it affects your life. My parents, my biological parents, they got divorced when I was 1. So I have zero recollection of how that process went. My mother also went through a second divorce. That definitely hit at a way different time in my life. So it's interesting to see how the age plays into it all. Yeah.
When I always think about too, the people who, like you, for example, whose parents got divorced when they were like super young, I never experienced as a kid like switching between houses or bringing a spend the night bag for the opposite house or whatever. Even that is like a whole separate world. I feel like I would be a lot different mentally today if I really did switch houses every single week and stuff like that. Like I feel like that would really change my perspective on things.
Oh yeah, I cannot imagine doing that.
Yeah.
All right, those are all of the questions I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on to here and talking with me about something I know sometimes isn't super easy to talk about. You can already start to notice some similarities and common occurrences from just the first 2 guests, but let's get on with our third and final guest. Hello, guest number 3, welcome to the podcast, and let's start.
Question 1, how old were you when your parents divorced?
My parents were divorced when I was 3 years old. I had just turned 3.
How long, if you know, did the divorce process take from the moment that your parents decided to get the divorce till when everything was resolved and their parents were legally divorced?
So my parents got divorced in 2005. I believe the process took about a year or 2.
Okay, gotcha. Did you have siblings at the time?
I have an older brother. He's 2 years older than me.
Okay. Do you think that having your siblings now or like as you got older made the divorce easier to deal with? Maybe it was nice having someone else, or was having siblings more of like a burden in trying to protect them or like, explain things to them?
It was definitely beneficial because we were kind of going through the same thing.
Mhm.
My brother was definitely the one that protected me, and he kind of like rubbed off his really confident energy. Like he really shaped me to be more strong with dealing with parents being divorced. So
Mhm.
it was definitely nice to have him around.
Do you remember sort of what the dynamic was like between your parents after the divorce, as well as between like your mom and your dad after the divorce?
They were on good terms for the most part. They were friendly with each other for us.
Mhm.
So they would communicate with each other about us, and that was mostly to the extent of their relationship after the divorce. But
Mhm.
for the most part, they were on good terms.
Okay, and what about you with your parents?
My dad lives on the other side of the state. We moved away from him, so I kind of drifted away from him as much. I used to only see him on the weekends, every other weekend, and now it's like once a month, once every 2 or 3 months.
Mhm.
So I definitely like lost a little bit of that relationship, but I still talk to him almost every day. And then me and my mom are closer than ever.
Which part out of the lead up to the divorce, which you don't remember, the actual divorce process, and then post divorce, would you say was the most emotionally tolling, or if emotionally tolling at all?
Definitely the aftermath. That's all what I remember, and going through the changes, like moving away and figuring out who gets who, what time, who buys what. That was
Yeah.
really stressful at times. And there was a lot of arguing and sometimes lots of disagreeing. And because we were so far away from each other, meeting halfway was always an argument. Where are we
Mm.
going to meet? Who's going to drive who to whose house? Who gets Christmas? Stuff like that. So it was pretty stressful.
Right, that is definitely understandable how hectic a divorce can make life as we know it. Thank you so much for taking your time to talk with me today. I seriously appreciate it so much. Now, after talking with each of the guests, I think it's safe to say that going through a divorce comes with many repercussions that affect so many different aspects of our lives. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode talking with real people about their own personal experiences. This is very different from the usual science-based topic with piles of data and evidence, but I think these simple conversations served as an equally important source. This has been another episode of 101 Thoughts. Follow us on social media for more content, and thank you for listening.